The streets of Rhyme City are rough, gritty, full of CGI. I only took on this case to clear my name, but I'm worried I'm up Cerulean Cave without a Master Ball. Thankfully though, I have the perfect partner for the job.
Hey, I'm Pika here.
Satsu, what the hell are you wearing? Is that a Pikachu costume?
Well, I kinda blew the CGI budget on Avatar Month, so, this is what we have.
Wait, we have a budget?
Okay, fine, I'll change.
Thankfully though, I have the perfect partner. He's quick, electric, and enough. Is that a Ryan Reynolds mask?
Well, it was either this or the Chris Pratt one, but for some reason Martin has it for the weekend.
That's it. I quit. I cannot work like this.
Welcome to AniMAYtion Month, everyone. Pika. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of AniMAYtion Month. My name's Satsunami and joining me is none other than my partner in crime. It is Andrew. Andrew, welcome to AniMAYtion Month.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Down.
Hi everyone.
That's going to be this whole episode, just us riffing on the Pokemon theme.
If I knew it enough by heart, I'd just stop going to the Poke Rap.
You mean Electro, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, Venusaur, Rattata, Fearow, and dare I say, Pidgey? Yes.
Alright then, you got me beat.
I have to say, I was singing it in the car with my partner the other day, and by with my partner, I mean she was in the passenger
I know your
seat.
partner. There is in no capacity that she would have been singing along to the Poke Rap. I do not believe that she would have known the Poke Rap.
No, it's actually quite interesting because she didn't grow up with the English dub, or rather, she didn't grow up with our dub of the anime. And yeah, between that and telling her what the Digimon theme turned into, yeah, Butterfly it is not. Instead, digital monsters are the champions is apparently a massive downgrade, and I do not blame her for that. But fortunately, we are indeed not talking about Digimon this time, although we do have to do that for an episode because it is a fascinating series. But today for AniMAYtion Month, we are diving into where real life mixes in with the world of CGI. This time, we are discussing Detective Pikachu, which honestly, I have to say, it was a surprising release at the time. It came out in the 3rd of May in Japan and the 10th of May in the USA in 2019. I don't think anybody was really expecting this film. So before we dive into it, Andrew, I've got to ask, see when you heard about this film, see when you heard about Ryan Reynolds playing a Pikachu, trying to find the guy from Jurassic World's dad and everything, were you hopeful?
I was interested in it, for sure. I was aware of the video game that had existed prior to this, that the movie itself is based on. Obviously not just Pokemon, that there was the Detective Pikachu video game. I had never played it. I saw a lot of people linking Danny DeVito to play Detective Pikachu based on things that they had done with the video game. I don't think he ever actually voiced the video game. I think people just kind of dubbed him into it, but that was kind of what I was expecting. So when I heard it was going to be Ryan Reynolds, I was pretty perplexed by that choice, but it was intriguing enough a concept that I was willing to kind of give it a go, and that I did actually go to the cinema with my partner to go see this back in 2019.
Yeah, it was just such a left field decision because I can't remember the year that... Do you remember when they remade the first Pokemon film, but they made it with that really horrible CGI?
Yeah, I think that was after this though, wasn't it?
I think so.
2019, so kind of the same year.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I remember hearing about that at exactly the same time, and I was like, I thought that they would maybe go for something like that, but I feel as if by 2019 especially, the run of, although they had more after it, the run of Ash Ketchum-centric films was probably running dry. You know that scene out of Lord of the Rings? The age of Ash Ketchum is over. The age of Ryan Reynolds has begun.
Justice Smith.
Oh, God, we'll get to him, don't you worry.
What's interesting is that this is the first theatrical release for a Pokemon movie since Pokemon Heroes. And that was, what, back in like 2005, 2006?
Something like that, yeah. That's actually surprising. I thought the last theatrical release was the 3rd Pokemon film.
No, I actually... did I go to the cinema to see that? I think I went to the cinema to see the 4th one, Pokemon Heroes. But I certainly had it on DVD because I watched that a lot. That was the one with Latios and Latias, wasn't it?
I just have to actually you there. It was actually the 5th film, I think.
Oh, was the Celebi one the 4th one?
Well, it's called Pokemon 4 ever, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It wasn't called 5 ever. That means he's going to be with them one more more than forever.
You know that one, it was like 12th Pokemon movie or something where Pikachu speaks and is like, I love you. That feels like that's Pokemon 5 ever.
That sounds about right, to be fair. And I also watched that film. I was not a fan, but...
I've not seen it. I just saw the clip online. The first time I saw that clip was someone had shared an in-cinema or something like that. It was some sort of screening that was happening and the entire crowd gasped and were like, oh my God!
Yeah, that was such an overreaction. No offense to the people who did react like that, but I remember seeing that exact video and they're like, oh God, Pikachu's talking. And you're like,
I guarantee you 70% of the audience is adults as well.
Oh no, try 90. Come on. There's like one child saying, I want to go home, Dad. Quiet, Billy. We're watching Pikachu speak.
What's a Pikachu?
I'm a Digimon fan.
I have no son.
Oh, but anyway, my theatre experiences aside.
Actually, I just want to quickly say, when I went to the cinema to see Detective Pikachu back in 2019, I remember I went either before the film or during the film, or at some point I went for my usual toilet break. It's become a staple in when I'm talking about films at the cinema.
Did you just miss the entire film?
No, I didn't miss the entire film for this one. But I remember, I think it was before the film started. I went in and a small child in the urinal next to me to start a conversation with me. And I was like, okay, small child. And he was like, what film are you seeing? And I was like, Detective Pikachu. And his eyes just lit up. He was like, me too. I was like, oh my God, I'm clearly 20 years older than this child. Not quite at that point, but almost. I'm like, yes, I'm also here with my child. I'm not here with my now fiance, soon to be wife.
Well, that makes me feel quite sad because do you know who I went to see this with?
Adam.
No, my mum. I kid you not. Right, here's the thing about Detective Pikachu. This is not a joke, by the way.
Satsu, that's so lame. Did she buy your ticket?
No, I bought my own damn ticket like a tax-paying adult.
Did she buy you your popcorn?
Maybe. No, the reason for that, in all seriousness, I remember it came out and at the time my partner wasn't here, so I didn't really have anyone to go with. I think for the most part, everybody I knew that I could have gone with, they had either seen it or they had absolutely zero interest in going. I remember asking my brother as well when he was like, honestly, he pulled the most disgusted look and he was like, ugh, Detective Pikachu. And then my mum was just like, yeah, I'll go. Why not? So yeah, we went. I had a good time. Honestly, no shame for it.
It was almost the last film that I saw pre-pandemic, I think.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. No, it wasn't the last one for me. What was that again? Oh, I can't actually remember.
I think the last one I saw was My Hero Academia movie or something like that.
I can't remember the last film I saw before the pandemic, but what I do remember is it was the whole family. We all went out to watch it. But yeah, going back to Detective Pikachu, yeah, we went to see it. I had a good time with the film. It was great. Yeah, it's an interesting film because it's one of these films that is very nostalgic. It's packed with references to the games, to the franchise and whatnot. But there's good bits, there's bad bits, and then there's very fascinating bits. So before we go on, of course, the Pokemon are based on, and for any millennials, you'll know exactly the art I'm talking about here because you and I were talking about it before we came on. The art of R.J. Palmer, who is an absolutely fantastic artist, but he does the hyper-realistic art of Pokemon. And I remember seeing the trailer for it and everything thinking, these Pokemon look very familiar, obviously other than the fact they're Pokemon, but you know, the design and the art for them. And then I was like, oh my God, that looks exactly like those hyper-realistic Pokemon. And it was really cool to see that they worked with that and they managed to bring it to real life and render them and everything. Some look better than others, I'm going to be honest, but again, we'll get to that.
Of his art style prior to the movie, or do you mean the movie itself's interpretation of some of the Pokemon?
I think some of them are interpreted from his designs, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Like, you know, the kind of hyper-realistic scales and Charizard and...
Yeah, I agree. There's certainly some of the Pokemon that I felt worked better than others. I don't know if that was a case of they maybe weren't designed to how I would have preferred them to be designed, or if it was a case of they just don't really translate well to a live action, when I say live action, a realistic CGI format. Some do belong in a very cartoony kind of look. Gengar was one that I felt didn't look quite right to me, but I think that might be a personal preference on that one.
No, I'm totally with you there. There were definitely some that blended in and they looked absolutely incredible. And then others, it's like their design is so cartoony. I think they would really struggle with some of the newer designs of Pokemon because they look a lot more cutesy and very simplistic. And don't get me wrong, the first to, I want to say 6th or 7th gen, you know, they've got their simplistic designs, but compared to this one, yeah, there was the fluffy ones like Pikachu, of course, Pancham, you had Apom, you had all these fluffy ones, you had Snorlax as well, who was weirdly fluffy, but I didn't mind that. Yeah, there was definitely a mix. Speaking of the designs, and I don't know if you heard about this, but apparently in Japan, there was a lot of people obsessed with the way that Pikachu looked in certain keyframes. I don't know if you've heard about this, where his face would scrunch up so he would look like an old man. They were giving out stickers of this.
That's fun.
Yeah, I'm not even joking. There was a guy who went over to Japan. The only reason I found out about this, it was a YouTuber who went to Japan to see Detective Pikachu, but he bought a ticket and then he's like, oh, I've seen the film already. And then he put the ticket in the bin just to get this sticker.
Oh my god.
What the hell?
We got Pokemon cards from the cinema that we went to. There was ones that were specially made for the movie. So there was like a Detective Pikachu card. There was Snubble. The designs were the hyper-realistic ones. That was quite fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The title for this particular thing is Furrowed Detective Pikachu Turns into Official Real-Life Stickers. And it's literally just Pikachu with a scrunched up face. There's things from the film, like when he's hiding from Charizard, when he's singing the Pokemon theme. But yeah, apparently that was a Japanese-only thing. It wasn't here. Funny enough, the theatre that I went to, they didn't offer any stickers or cards or anything, but what I remember getting was, and this is so sad, but I remember getting the DVD of it purely because I saw it in the shops and I'm like, nah, I don't need it. And then it's like, but it comes with a free card. So of course I'm like, I want it. It's got Pikachu sipping coffee. I think that's probably the same one that you must have.
Yeah, quite possibly. I can't remember for sure if it's him sipping coffee, but I think you might be right.
It's just a still of the film, to be honest, which on the one hand you think, that's a little bit lazy, but on the other hand it's cool. That is still cool to have.
It's nice to have a unique movie tie-in card like that.
And before we get into the film, I of course took to social media to ask our amazing Pandalorians what they thought of this film. So the first comment that we've got is from Dissect That Film that says, this was a lot of fun. I loved how the Pokemon looked and seeing them in live action was a treat. Gamesperience podcast said, the Pokemon did not look as bad as I feared.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. There was a huge concern of doing Pokemon in live action that they would come out looking like the 1980s Super Mario movie or something like that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Or 1990s. I can't remember when that
93, unfortunately.
Yeah. Early 90s Super Mario film. But they looked, for the most part, very much as you would hope that they would look. With a few exceptions and a few notable ones, like Mr. Mime was one that would often be brought up as to like how terrifying and why he looked like Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
I mean, even Adam is terrified. If you listen to our Living in the Pokemon World episode, he absolutely hates Mr. Mime. It's like I'm going around saying, oh, I'd be terrified if a bee drill flew through my window, and he's like, no, Mr. Mime breaking into your house. I agree, but still.
I am fascinated by how society would operate in a Pokemon world, because they kind of gave you a bit of a glimpse into it, but I don't feel like they fully illustrated what was going on, because for some of them there was a harmonious, oh, they're assisting each other with jobs, that bird Pokemon is flying up this piece of equipment to that crane, and that Machamp is directing traffic and that kind of stuff. But then you have some that are just like out and about that are kind of more chaotic animals that have these superpowers that can mess you up at any given time, and not all of them are going to be acting with the best intentions. And I also was curious because they said at one point when they got to Rhyme City, no Pokeballs, humans and Pokemon just living together in harmony. And I was like, well, does that mean that you can only really have one Pokemon as your partner? Because you can't just be walking around with a troop of Pokemon. And like some Pokemon are gigantic. Do you just not live in the city if you have a very big Pokemon? At one point they evolve a Magikarp into a Gyarados. What's that Gyarados doing now? Because surely it needs to be in water by some point.
I think it's probably like Zootopia logic, maybe. maybe. There's different areas that they could probably live in, but I know what you mean.
Segregation is what you're saying then.
If you want an eco-society, Rhyme City ain't that. That's what I'm saying. You know, surprisingly, I feel as if our interpretation wasn't as far off as what's in this film. But before we dive in, we have one more comment, and that's, of course, from amazing friend of the podcast, Cold Case Kansas, the social detective podcast, who says, one of my favourite films, can't wait. And I think that is the perfect comment to leap off and, yeah, discuss why we wouldn't live in this world. So, Andrew, are you ready?
I think so. It dawned on me this might actually be our first episode talking about Pokemon together. I don't think I've been on any of the previous Pokemon episodes, so this is going to be a fun deep dive as well.
You know, I think you're actually right. So, as I go away and process that information, we will indeed be right back after these Poke messages. Welcome to Satsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Satsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Chatsunani, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
stay hydrated.
We're Seismic Cinema. I'm Colin. I've probably not seen it. Paul's watched it in the wrong order.
And I'm James, and I've probably written an essay on it. And that's Seismic Cinema. We believe in the power of escapism.
Oh, thank God for that. That'll do.
And we are back. So let's dive into the world of Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Honestly, I think that this film is probably a good, and it almost reminds me a little bit of the Super Mario Brothers film and the Sonic the Hedgehog film, in the sense of, I think that this is a good stepping stone film, that if they were ever to make a sequel and things, which as of this episode they haven't, which I am really surprised at. I don't know about you.
I believe there's one in development. I don't know if it's going to be within the Detective Pikachu kind of idea, or if they're using like Pokemon as almost like Pokemon : Detective Pikachu, and there's going to be other Pokemon movies that are live action CGI hybrid going forth with other stories that are being told.
Pokemon, a Snorlax story.
Just telling the Godfather in Pokemon.
Yeah, I'd watch it. Yeah, it's really surprising that they never really, at least they never really capitalised on it, because as far as I remember, this film was really received well, and it was one of the best grossing video game films of all time, up until, of course, Sonic came along and just spin dashed right all over that.
I think it was the Super Mario Brothers movie that officially took it over as the highest grossing video game movie of all time. Until that point it was, but then the Super Mario movie made like 3 times what this one earned.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous money. We of course talked about that 2 months ago, I think, and again for the highest grossing video game film, I think Martin and I were very lukewarm on it. We were like, yeah, it was good, but again, it's not perfect, which I know you don't expect that from their first foray into the world of Pokemon. So, of course, because it's AniMAYtion Month, I'm going to turn it on you first and ask you, what did you think of the animation in this and the effects? Because, as we said, this is a hybrid between live action and tennis balls getting flown in their faces, masquerading as Pokemon and whatnot. How believable did you find it? Obviously, you know they're not real. I know, for all the younger Pandalorians. I know, for all the younger Pandalorians crying, it's like, leave the room. But, yeah, how did you feel? Did you think it blended really well, or did you think there was kind of awkward moments where you're like, nah, that doesn't work?
I think for the most part, I thought it blended pretty well. And I thought a lot of the actors did a decent enough job of pretending that there was something there with them. The weird one was when Ken Watanabe was stroking Snubble's head at one point, and I was like, this is a fantastic actor who's doing an absolutely terrible job of acting in this movie and like pretending that he's stroking this invisible thing. And I was wondering if there was a dude in just like a green screen costume that he's just stroking the head of, or how they filmed that.
Because I remember when I was watching the behind the scenes stuff for the Sonic film, they used real life puppets to kind of gauge where they were, and it's honestly some of the most funny behind the scenes stuff. You're just looking at this very serious scene and it's just a Sonic puppet going, oh my gosh, no way. kind of thing. Honestly, it must have been quite not a challenge, because I was watching the behind the scenes stuff with Ryan Reynolds talking about it, and I think his main draw for this was that he wanted to be in a film where he could watch it with his kids.
He does not have many of those, so that's fair.
What's it got? Deadpool, The Proposal. Oh yeah, child friendly.
And he was essentially just Deadpool again in this.
Pretty much, yeah. There was some moments where you could see the lines kind of being blurred. One of the performances that I really want to point out, and I pointed it out to you, and this is how impactful she was, that you didn't even realise she was in it, because I was the same. That, of course, being the singer Rita Ora. I have no idea how she wrangled a job in this film.
It's such a bizarre casting, because who are you doing this for? Who's going to be like, oh yeah, Rita Ora was in this?
For like 2 seconds, yeah.
And yeah, she has such a brief cameo. Is not very recognizable because she's wearing like a full hazmat suit kind of thing. So it was very odd. I don't know if it was just her attempt to kind of gain acting credit so that she can maybe do more acting going forward, but she didn't really stand out enough that she would likely get anything else after this. I don't know if she did or not, but it was very odd. I guess it was during when Rita Ora was a bit more well known as well. At the time of recording this, I don't think many people are still talking about Rita Ora.
Yeah, our PR department dropped the ball there.
Drop the Pokeball.
When Rita Ora isn't on screen in Detective Pikachu, we want our child audience saying, where's Rita Ora? Where is she? The only reason I make such a big deal about this is just the fact that it almost took me out of the film completely when you hear this person in the most monotone way go, oh no, there is a containment failure. Oh my gosh, explosion. Again, I'm not expecting, thespian, Shakespearean acting here. It's Detective Pikachu, come on, but I'm expecting a wee bit of effort. Come on. It's like, this is the first line of the film. That's the thing that baffles me. What's even more baffling is, flashing forward to the ending, is there's a big parade scene and everything. And I thought, well, if you were going to incorporate her into that, you could have her as, I don't know, an idol or a poke singer or something like that. But no, as you said, she's in a hazmat suit, and it's like,
She could have been Jigglypuff.
Yeah, she could have been. No. Yeah, it was just a really weird casting choice. Anyway, sorry, that's my rant for that. Done for the evening. But for the other actors, I have to say, when I saw Justice Smith, I kind of recoiled a bit, because the last time I saw him in a film was the second Jurassic World film.
I still don't think I've seen the second Jurassic World movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw it in the cinema. It was not a good time. Jurassic World, you can wave it off and say it was silly, but it was fun. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, that was horrific. Yeah, it was a year before this one, and I just remember him as the lab assistant that always was screaming in the camera, and it was, oh, it's so funny, he's screaming into the camera. And don't get me wrong, he has a few moments like that in this film, but yeah, it was just really annoying.
They toned back his role in the third one, which I did actually see. I, for some reason, skipped the second one and went to the third.
Honestly, you're not missing much with both of them. They double down on the dinosaurs being in the military, which again is the weirdest fan fiction I think I've ever seen. It's a bit like this, where it's like, oh, we're cloning Pokemon for the military. It's like, but why though? You have guns. Why would you do this?
Well, not only that, why do you need to clone them for the most part? I mean, for some that are legendary, like Mewtwo and stuff, fair enough. Or Mew, rather. But they seem to be quite a lot of them, and you can breed them as well. So what's the need for cloning? Except I guess they do like that weird genetic manipulation to make... Like, what do they do to Greninjas? They just made them aggressive?
Yeah, they just make them stronger. Yeah.
And then the Torterras were just huge.
Yeah, I loved that. I will go into that later, but I did love that. In the words of Daft Punk, they made them harder, better, faster, and indeed stronger. That's probably where they got the idea. Like, what do we do in this genetic lab? And then Daft Punk come in and go, leave it to us, guys. We've got this. That's the weirdest joke I think I've ever made in Satsunami. I apologise. But yeah, going back to the animation though, I feel as if it does hold up. Like, the effects do hold up, but it's that uncanny valley that at times, I think Pikachu definitely blends in. He looks cute and everything. He's got the deer stalker hat. He's got the addiction to coffee, which I was like, same Pikachu. Oh my god, I'm relating to Ryan Reynolds in the Pikachu. I like that. I thought the characters as well, as you said, it was really interesting. The one that confused me though was Bill Nye.
That was a very bizarre role that Bill Nye had. Spoilers, he's the villain of the film.
No.
To be honest, he plays it like I've seen Bill Nye play every performance, except for maybe like Davy Jones. He's quite a campy actor from what I've seen of him, and that came across in this, and it did seem very much like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about in this Pokemon world situation, which was probably going to be the case for anyone they cast, but they had him set up as this overarching villain was not the strongest point in the film, I'll say.
Yeah, because I thought that exact thing where I think it was Pikachu himself who was like, sweet Arceus, that hit the good spot or something like that. And you know, that way they're obviously trying to tie it into the bigger world building, and they do have the Pokegods, as it were, behind Bill Nye and things like that. And all I could keep thinking throughout it, you know, as an adult, obviously kids wouldn't really pick up on that, but as an adult thinking, I wonder what these guys are thinking, you know, when they say these things. Is Bill Nye saying these things and he's like, I was in love actually, you know? It's like, that's nice, Mr. Nye. No, I was in Pirates of the Caribbean too. That's nice. Obviously he's been in a heck of a lot better, but you know what I mean.
His role as Davy Jones was his magnum opus, actually.
I mean, true. Anyone who runs out in a mocap suit, I mean, just look at Andy Serkis. They should have had Ryan Reynolds in a mocap suit just running about.
When you were talking earlier about using puppets and having someone there, I was kind of hoping that Ryan Reynolds was like in a Pikachu onesie during the scenes, just as like a point of action character.
That would actually be amazing. I'm not gonna lie. But no, I thought for the most part, though, the actors did a great job, especially with Justice Smith, as we said, who plays Tim Goodman. We've got Catherine Newton, who plays Lucy Stevens. Bill Nighy as the devious Howard Clifford.
It's the most British-sounding name ever as well.
But yeah, no, I thought for the most part, they all did a great job. And although they had some clunky dialogue, I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of dialogue where I was kind of sitting there going, yeah, I bet you they were reading that out and then they were like, who says this stuff? Like, listen, just read the script and you can go home for the day. You can see your family once you've read this out.
Imagine being like Alec Guinness reading Star Wars, who's like, what is this nonsense?
It reminds me of, and this is such a sad image to conjure in the Pandalorian's minds, but do you remember when Ian McKellen got upset in The Hobbit?
Mm-hmm. He like cried because he was in a room by himself, like a CGI room.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a similar thing, but it's Ryan Reynolds beside a bust of Pikachu. He's like, is this what my career's become? But see, in all seriousness, despite, although I'm kind of poking fun a wee bit, but see, as a Pokemon fan, taking off the analytical goggles here, how did you feel about this film? As a Pokemon fan, was this everything you wanted to see in a Pokemon film?
I wouldn't say necessarily all I wanted to see, but it certainly scratched that itch of what I like to have seen in a movie. There was lots of moments where I was smiling while watching the film with like, oh, look what character that is, look what they're making that character do. Like we were talking earlier about, they're making the Machamp direct traffic because the Snorlax sleeping in the street, and when they had Cubone very early crying and then running and fighting them, and they had the Loudreds like beatboxing and that kind of thing. Like that was all very, very fun. I like to see how they utilized Pokemon in a real world setting. Within the games and the anime, you are getting a very, pardon the pun, but two-dimensional view of this world, whereas this is kind of fleshing out how society would actually feel and what Pokemon's roles within society would be. So it was certainly doing a lot for me that I would have hoped to have seen. There was certainly some moments where you're kind of like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that kind of thing, like the lick-a-tongue slowly licking Justice Smith's face and the face of Mr. Mime and that kind of thing. But otherwise, I did feel like they covered what I would have liked to have seen of this world.
Yeah, because as you were saying, what I appreciated was the fact that a lot of these Pokemon, obviously, they're all different and there's a wide variety of them. I think as of recording this episode, there's over 900, I want to say, Pokemon. But at the time of this film, it would probably have been a couple of hundred less.
1,025.
1,000? Oh my god, that's too many. That's too many for this Gen 1er to remember.
That's if you remove the advanced evolutions and whatnot.
Ah, right, okay.
So if you include those, there are 1,164.
Oh my god, that's horrific. Gen 10 coming out this year. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, what I appreciated was the fact that you could tell that this city was lived in with the Pokemon, that they interacted with particular things, like as you were saying with the Machamp, and you mentioned that at the beginning of the film when Tim comes in on the bullet train, you can see that there's I want to say it's a bravery, swoops down and gives someone a bag. At first, I'm not going to lie, when I rewatched it, I thought it was bravery giving the person a handbag, and I was like, oh, that's nice. He's delivering a handbag to that poor woman.
It's a mugging.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, put it in reverse, and it's like, what? is going on here? But I also loved a lot of the references in it, like at the side of the building, it had the word oak on it, and the cafe, it had the picture of Noctowl, who is just a giant owl Pokemon, obviously Night Owl, ha ha ha. There was a lot of wee Easter eggy things that you were constantly looking for, and honestly, it was almost a feast for the eyes at times where you were like, oh my god, I recognise this, I recognise that reference. It did feel as if it was a film that was made for the fans at times. Obviously not always, but for the most part, I genuinely think they absolutely nailed it. And you know, with the music score as well, there was kind of that, I don't want to say 8-bit, because I don't think that's really the right term, but you know, that kind of synth music when it was like the Pokemon battles and things, it was very reminiscent.
I certainly appreciate the homages and the references to music from the original games and the original show. That was a nice touch, I felt.
Because even in, I think it's the first scene that you're introduced to Bill Nye and his son, when they're making the broadcast, they have a riff of, see, the English Pokemon intro?
Yes.
Which I thought was really cool. I hadn't picked up on that the first time, or rather I'd just forgotten. But there's the obvious one later where Ryan Reynolds is crying and he's going, Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. And I thought that was amazing. I was laughing in the cinema for that one. But yeah, there's so much of that it almost doesn't matter. You've even got Red from the games at the very beginning when they're watching the Pokemon battle.
Okay, you think that was Red? Because I was trying to decide if that was supposed to be Red or if it was just a dude in a red cap.
Well, as the kids say nowadays, it was very red coded. You know, you had the hat, you had the jacket. I think it was supposed to be, yeah. You could probably interpret it as a different character, but I think maybe it was. But I still thought, either way, that was a really, really nice touch. I also liked how, although you didn't see all the Pokemon, there was definitely some fleeting ones. I sent you a picture of Bill Nye just stealing beside some Totodiles, and I just put 10 out of 10. Perfect film. Just Bill Nye with a couple of Totodiles living in the moment. I also loved the Bulbasaur scene as well, because I'm a huge Bulbasaur fan.
Bulbasaur was one of the best rendered Pokemon I felt of there. His head looked just like, and eyes looked just like toothless actually from How to Train Your Dragon. So it was an interesting kind of thing because he looked more like a dragon from a dragon movie than Charizard did.
Also, fun fact, apparently, you know the scene where they're trying to heal Pikachu after he falls off the Torterra, which I'll touch on in a second, but they're going through the woods. Apparently that was filmed in Scotland, would you believe?
I did notice the filming locations were like Colorado, England, and Scotland. So that is very interesting.
Because my partner keeps saying, do you want to go to the forest where they filmed Detective Pikachu? And I'm like, you know what? I think dry day, let's just pack up the car, go see it. I haven't had a chance to go see it yet, but I would love to. Just famous last selfie. I'm in the Detective Pikachu forest. But touching on my other favourite grass Pokemon, Torterra, see that entire scene, genuinely, that was just absolute fan service. I loved it when the Torterras rise from the ground. And
I did struggle to suspend my disbelief that no one had noticed what looked to be like 7 mountain-sized Pokemon. You'd be able to see that from a far distance. Have they kept that under wraps?
Counterpoint, how did Wall Maria fall in Attack on Titan, Andrew?
A giant titan kicked it.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't see that coming either, did they? I apologise for any Attack on Titan fans listening.
I apologise for any citizens that were held in the walls of Maria.
That's next week's episode. But yeah, that was definitely a rule of cool moment. You know, on the one hand, you think, okay, that's a bit impractical, but on the other hand, the inner child in me was just like, I don't care. We've got a giant Torterra. Well, sorry, Torterras. Torterrae. We've got massive Torterras just stomping in the landscape. And to me, that looked really, really good. That was something out of Shadow of the Colossus or, well, as we said, Attack on Titan. It was really well done. I loved that whole sequence. One Pokemon I have to say I was a little bit let down with was Mewtwo. I don't know how you feel about this.
Yeah, I felt like they went for more computer generated. It looked more like what we'd referenced earlier about that Mewtwo Strikes Back CGI movie that came out the same year. It looked more akin to that than any of the other kind of more live action looking Pokemon. I'm not quite sure why that was. That maybe they put the same kind of generation into that one and it just didn't translate as well. Or maybe maybe they tried attempts to make Mewtwo look more realistic and it was just kind of creepy looking. So they abandoned that because Mewtwo is supposed to be kind of like a big psychic cat man thing, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he's cloned off of Mew, so he should technically be a psychic cat. Yeah, but they made him quite rubbery looking, kind of scaly. I don't know what material, but there was no fur on him. It was almost like is it a Sphinx cat? You know, the cats that don't have any fur at all? It was kind of like that. It was like Beerus from
I was going to
Dragon
say,
Ball.
it was like Beerus.
Yeah, it was kind of off-putting. Mewtwo, I have to say, is one of my favourite legendaries, so I don't know how they would have translated it. I thought he looked good in some bits, but overall I was kind of like, it's okay. Yeah, that's the only other one I think that maybe looked a bit strange. Also, speaking of looks and the Easter eggs of this film, did you also notice the film that Tim was watching when they went into his dad's apartment?
No, what was it?
It was, I want to say, Angels with Dirty Souls, the Home Alone one.
The one Kevin McAllister's has recorded to play when the robbers come in.
Yeah, that's the one. It's really strange. I mean, it's a cool touch, but the Venn diagram of Pokemon fans and hardcore Home Alone fans of that particular scene, I was like, do they overlap? Maybe. More research is needed on this, but that was kind of a, you know, you looked and you're like, that's interesting. There was also a Seinfeld reference as well. It's when they're in the back of the car, and it's a very similar thing that happens in the show where one of the characters is yelling Serenity now because he wants to calm down, but he's just about to blow his lid at any moment, and that's what Pikachu says to Psyduck, which I have to admit I find that pretty funny.
Touching again on some things we've already discussed of the design and mannerisms that they did for Pikachu were so adorable. At so many points, myself and my wife, when we were watching it yesterday, were just like, oh my god, he's so cute. If any Pokemon could be brought into the real world, I think it would have to be Pikachu, just because he is the ultimate mascot for that franchise. He is so adorable. You can very much imagine giving him a little hug and then he just charges your phone for you.
Yes, that's enough hugs. Now charge my phone, come on.
I've lived up my side of the bargain, Pikachu.
No, I'm totally with you there. I feel as if, and again, going back to what we were saying, there are a lot of varying designs, but Pikachu was the one that they hit it out of the park with. And honestly, see, for the humour in this film, I felt for the most part it was Pikachu doing the heavy lifting in this film. A lot of the jokes that obviously are tailored to Ryan Reynolds and his sensibilities and whatnot, but I felt as if he did a really good job of that, as well as looking cute while doing it. I think that was the point of it, the contrast of him looking cute and then also saying things like, get me the hell out of here, when he's about to get eaten by a Charizard and everything. You're like, oh dear.
Yeah, it was pretty fun seeing the whole battle thing, and then you had him kicking a Magikarp.
I mean, I did love the idea that there's an underground Pokemon ring going on there, but it also brought up a very, very interesting question that Adam and I actually asked in our Living in the Pokemon World episode, where we were talking about, that surely you would have to have insurance people, and then at the very beginning we find out that Tim himself is a junior whatever working at an insurance firm. I think I said this at the time and I'll say it again now, that would honestly, maybe it's just me being old, but that would be a fascinating thing to see, even if it was genuinely just a documentary kind of thing, like The Office style. You know, it's like, someone kicked a Voltorb into my living room, well, you didn't have Pokemon proof glass, so I'm sorry, I don't care if you're 82 years old, but we can't replace your windows.
The next film, Pokemon Insurance Adjustment. What were your thoughts on the comedy in general in the movie? Did you find that most of the jokes kind of landed for you, or did you feel that there were quite a lot of duds in there?
I felt it varied, to be honest. As I said, I definitely think Ryan Reynolds was just the star of the show, almost to the extent that, see, at the very end, when, spoilers, but when we find out that Ryan Reynolds was inside Pikachu the entire time, like some kind of Jim Henson abomination, and he ends up splitting, and you get Pikachu still with the cute hat, but then you've got Ryan Reynolds standing beside him. And what I loved about that was they didn't even try to pokify him. It was just Ryan Reynolds in his own clothes. He was just standing there like, yep, I'm Ryan Reynolds in Pokemon. A bit like Chris Pratt, but that's another argument. But yeah, I thought for the most part, there was a couple, that were hit or miss. I thought Ditto was quite funny at times, transforming into Lucy and then transforming into the Cubone, which I have to admit got a chuckle out of me when he's trying to hit his hands to make him fall. I was like, okay, that's cruel, but that is actually hilarious.
It did certainly present Ditto as a much more formidable threat than Ditto really is in the games, because this Ditto didn't require the Pokemon that was transforming into to be like right there. It could just transform into whatever at any given time. Like, it got kicked out the window at one point and then came up as a bravery.
Yeah, there was a line, I think, after they threw it out the window that they say something like, oh, it was genetically augmented, and it's like, okay, that's why it can transform into everything. But I did think it was cool, though.
Yeah, it being people and like the eyes, that was really creepy.
It was very Coraline, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess a little bit in that way, just little black dots of eyes.
It's weird because when you see the plushes of it, you're like, oh, how cute. But if you think about it in real life, you'd be like, oh my god, that's really freaky. Get that Ditto out of here. Honestly, I think the humour, for the most part, pretty much landed. But what about yourself, though? What did you think?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of moments that it really worked quite well. I did feel like they were really playing up the Ryan Reynolds-ness with a lot of it. It was very Deadpool in how they were kind of playing Pikachu. Like, there was a scene where they were in the underground Pokemon fighting ring and they saw the bad guy DJ dude who his torso was exposed. Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu was kind of commenting on the fact that this guy didn't have a shirt on. It felt very obvious and it didn't really work for me. I felt it was a bit kind of a lame bit of dialogue, but for the most part I thought it landed pretty well. There was one scene where Catherine Newton, who we've not really touched on much, Catherine Newton's Lucy, was talking to her boss, who's the son of the bad guy, and he made such a scathing comment about her outfit, and I was like, damn, that was so unnecessary.
I have to admit, it was terrible, but it's when Bill Nye's in the chair and he turns around and he's like, oh, turn your back to me, why don't you? And I know they're obviously building that up as a red herring, but I was just like, that is so over the top. But at the same time, it was like, that is actually hilarious. Chris Gere, the name of the actor, I feel as if he played up the campiness of it and he slotted into this world really well. I have to say, I think Catherine Newton and Justice Smith, they did slip into it quite well as well. But then you've got other ones like Bill Nye and Ken Watanabe, who they are very serious actors. So to see them in a Pokemon film, you know, I didn't think they did a bad job by any means, not at all. But you know, that way you're just like, okay.
I don't feel Ken Watanabe played the role right. You either have to go deadpan, like you were in the most serious movie like Michael Caine in Muppets Christmas Carol, or you play up the campiness like Tim Curry in Muppets Treasure Island. You can't half-arse it. And I think that's what I kind of took issue with in Ken Watanabe's performance. I didn't really feel he was trying, and he wasn't in it enough for me to fully say that took me out of the movie or anything like that. But I was kind of like, oh, Ken Watanabe's in this and he doesn't seem to really care. He's just here for a paycheck.
Yeah, there was a couple of actors where you kind of thought, yes, that's a performance. And again, it's like these actors are distinguished. They've been in great things and whatnot. But there were a couple where it was like, I feel as if there was that kind of middling awkwardness of it because it's a Pokemon film and it's the first of this particular series. Kind of as a closing point, that's my thoughts about the film as a whole, that while there are some really campy bits that I enjoyed and I enjoyed the references and things, I honestly didn't mind that as much as I probably did with the Super Mario Brothers film that came out about 4 years later. But although there was the references and the kind of clunky dialogue at times, I felt as if this was the perfect stepping stone film for a live action universe for Pokemon, that if they were going to continue it, then they had this world that they had built up, and they were definitely linking it to the games as well, because I think Rhyme City is in the Detective Pikachu games, but you know, there was references to Sinnoh and Kanto and things, but there was a lot of references there that you thought, okay, you can build on this and you can really flesh it out. I'm just surprised that we haven't got a sequel yet to this film. And again, I know Pokemon, that billion-dollar company, they are very busy, you know, with Pokemon Concierge or with their collaborations with Lego and whatnot. They've got the games, they've got the plushies to sell, the trading card game. So maybe having a sequel to Detective Pikachu isn't on the cards, but I think that's a real shame, because for all the faults, as I said, I wonder what they would do with a sequel, because obviously if they had Ryan Reynolds and the Pikachu again, I think that would be quite lazy.
It wouldn't really make sense given what happened at the end of the movie to do that. So I don't think that they really can do that again. My guess is, as I was saying earlier, with the fact that I think it's going to be kind of like it's not called Pokemon Detective Pikachu, but I think that's going to be how it's treated.
Yeah.
That this is the launch pad for just other Pokemon stories within this world.
Yeah.
And we might get a cameo from Justice Smith's character or from Ryan Reynolds or something like that. But for the most part, I think it'll probably be its own kind of independent story. My guess as well is that they probably were intending to capitalize on this with a sequel sooner, but the pandemic probably slowed things down.
Yeah.
And I know now we're a couple of years out of, I mean, it's still out there, but we're for the most part out of it for the last couple of years. But it might have pushed things around a little bit more, so we might be further off from it. And there was also writers' strikes and all that kind of stuff. So that might have also contributed to the delay. But there is always concern for me with these kind of franchises when they take too long to capitalize and to get a sequel out, that interest is kind of lost. There's been a few lately that I was like, why have you waited this long to either make a movie about this property that was a hot interest at the time, or the sequel to a movie that was successful but has now taken so long that it's kind of left the zeitgeist?
Well, you say that, but Happy Gilmore 2 is being released soon, so...
I stand corrected.
Which is such a disgusting thing I've just said. I apologise. Comparing Happy Gilmore to Detective Pikachu, another weird animation film. It's a Geodude in a hard place, isn't it? See what I did there? Where, on the one hand, Pokemon's like massive, and I don't think anyone would begrudge them if they decided we're going to make a sequel about the Detective Pikachu franchise, or we're going to do a spin-off and whatnot. But as you said, it's been about 6 years, and I can't believe I'm saying that. It's been 6 years since this film came out. I mean, is it too late to make a film? Probably logistically, obviously not. Maybe they'll have better effects. They'll definitely be able to flesh out the lore a bit more and everything now that they've got the fundamentals kind of laid out. But honestly, I guess we'll just see. We'll have to see where Pokemon are going with this, whether they are going to follow up with a live action film again, or they're just going to leave it as, wow, that was a successful thing, and then never touch it again. It's going to be a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a lucrative property that I can't see them not capitalizing on it at some point. With the way that Hollywood and studios have been lately, there's every chance the studio that was going to make it got bought out by someone else who no longer had interest in it or something like that. There's so much weird stuff happening, and as you say, when this episode comes out, it'll have been pretty much 6 years to the day that it came out. So it does make it a lot more difficult, and that you've now got, if you were to try and bring back in Justice Smith, that someone who was at the time probably in his early 20s is now closer to 30, and so you can't really have that young character if you were to kind of make it more about him again. So I think that is another reason why I can't see them going back to that well.
I mean, can you imagine if they made a sequel when they put Justice Smith in the Pikachu?
The poor Pikachu's Freaky Friday situation is getting a bit out of hand.
Freaky Saturday, more like. Hopefully they don't do that if they do make a sequel, but I genuinely think that this is by far, although it's got flaws and we kind of nitpicked at them, this is probably one of the better video game film adaptations, and I'm not saying that facetiously as a joke, like, oh, it's such a low bar. I genuinely think this is an excellent attempt at not only, as we said before, blending CG with real life and trying to bring Pokemon into the real world, but also just a great Pokemon adaptation, because the people who made this, they clearly loved the franchise. There was a lot of Easter eggs and things. There was a lot of, genuinely, if you're a Pokemon fan, you will be scouring the background for different references, and oh, look, it's this Pokemon on the wall, or oh, they're referring to Professor Oak and this and that. It's honestly just absolutely incredible for what it achieved, and especially back in 2019, which I know was only 6 years ago. It's not relatively that long ago, but at the same time, for video game films to now be on the up and up, and I feel as if that was one of the films that definitely changed the discourse around it, because you had that, and then you had the Sonic film, now you've got the Mario film, you've got a lot of video game films that are just coming out now that are fantastic, that make you forget about all the terrible ones, like the Hitman film, the Prince of Persia.
Oh god, yeah. That was something I was wanting to bring up at some point in this, that we are now kind of an age where there has been a lot of hits for video game adaptations, both in a TV show capacity, in a movie capacity, live action, animation. They're doing these properties a lot better than they had been previously, that they've both the technology has kind of caught up to be able to do it, and also kind of I feel lessons have been learned about what not to do as well as what to do. That still hasn't been learned by some in terms of redesigns and whatnot. Cough, cough, Shrek. But that's a conversation for a different day because that's not...
That's for Shrek month.
Shrecuary.
Shrecuary. I'm half joking. 2026 isn't that far away.
When did the first one come out? 2001?
Something like that. Do you know, I'm pretty sure it came out the same time as The Philosopher's Stone. Reason being that I remember one Christmas, because I had the video for The Philosopher's Stone and Shrek. It's a really weird memory combo there, but yeah, it definitely had to be around that, yeah.
So it'll be 25 years next year, so we have to do a Shrecuary.
When I saw that list, I am indeed a believer. But no, you're totally right there. I do agree with you. I genuinely think that there is definitely scope for more reimaginings and kind of honing in the way that they're going to present these types of stories in the future. I doubt it'll be exactly the same because a lot has changed over the years, but that's only a good thing though, because you get more creative visions and creative people coming into these projects that they want to show off their almost vision, as it were, of Pokemon, whether they're a fan or just getting paid for the job. Either way, as long as it's not Uwe, then absolutely. Between that and Quentin Tarantino, don't let them touch Pokemon with a barge pole.
I would be fascinated to see Quentin Tarantino take on a Pokemon movie.
I don't know if I even want to see what it would
There's
come
going to
up
be
with.
so much blood and gore, so many feet.
Every character's replaced by Hitmonlee. Would you believe that's the second most horrible thing I've said in a Pokemon episode? The first involving Odysseus. But on that note, Andrew, thank you so much for coming onto this episode, reminiscing about Pokemon, but also reminiscing about this wonderful film.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming that I finally got to talk about a Pokemon property, and I'm glad I got to talk about a film that was very interesting to me back in 2019 and even today.
And of course, before we wrap up, where can these amazing Pandalorians find your content?
The Pandalorians can find me in other fantastic episodes of Satsunami. I've done lots of other themed months with Satsu and lots of other kind of individual episodes as well. If you enjoyed this, then you might also enjoy some of our anime discussions that we've had with Satsunami, and also even this month, so I think it'll be next week now, that we'll be talking about the anime film Your Name, so please do watch out for that. You can also check both myself and Satsu, and also you'll have heard him this month for AniMAYtion, Martin McAllister, as well as Bob Altoaster on Stop, Drop and Roll Initiative, a Dungeons & Dragons podcast that we also do. That can be found at SDRI Pod on Twitter as well, and I'm at GreenShield95 on Twitter.
And if you would like to find more episodes from ourselves about AniMAYtion Month, as well as all of our previous theme months and Pokemon content, of course, then you can check us out on our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. I want to thank our amazing Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster, Sonia, Ghostie, and Cryptic1991. Thank you so much for supporting the show. But if you would like access to exclusive episodes, early access, commentary tracks, and our true thoughts about Detective Pikachu 2, for legal reasons that last one is a joke, then you can indeed check us out at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Chatsunami. This podcast is of course a member of the Podpack Collective. For more information, check us out on Twitter/X at Podpack Collect. I also want to point out as well that if you would like to see us live, then you can check us out every so often on our Twitch page, twitch.tv/Chatsunami, where I have actually been getting into the groove again with live streaming some episodes. We have already had our first episode of Chatsu Cafe that has come out, featuring myself and the fantastic Martin McAllister. Hope to get more guests on for that. It's absolutely fantastic. But yep, that is twitch.tv/Chatsunami. But until next time, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of AniMAYtion Month. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly,
Hold on to that Master Ball, you don't know when you're going to need it.
I was going to say stay hydrated, but that's even better.
Use water again.